a good result in this area, then we try to direct things to them. And or we also try to learn from them so that we raise the other teams up to the same level. It's not about making specialty teams. It's about finding out what these people do and what they're doing and relay that to the rest of the teams so that everybody comes up. It's not just putting more work on them. So I mentioned yesterday that we have a specialty team, North Carolina, that works with people that have DNA defects, we would say. And actually, Andy Hayner works with them, and he mentioned several of the testimonies in his book. And so, if you would like to know more about the specialty teams, you should probably talk to Andy, and he can help you out also with their team. Now, we also have Skype teams. If we don't have live teams in your area, we can put you in a Skype live team until we build a team in your area. So the main thing is we want to get you connected, answer your questions, and help you grow. That's the purpose. And so we have ways of doing it. So we have different teams for different situations. So now also, the question said, did you say the Christians shouldn't lay hands on Christians? And if not, why? Okay, I did not say that. We lay hands on any person that needs help. What I said was, it is not God's best will, okay, some people would say it's perfect will, or you may call it, that we lay hands on other Christians. Meaning, Christians, in a perfect world, Christians shouldn't need hands laid on them. But that's what we're getting to, right? So you don't take that as condemnation, you don't take that as anything, negative toward yourself or anything else. We're growing. And we want to get people growing up. We want you to walk. Okay, first off, we want to make sure that Christians are healed. Then we want to make sure Christians walk in divine health. And as they're healed and they walk in divine health, they're helping others be healed and learn to walk in divine health, and they should be getting saved. So it's a constant ongoing process. But the idea is that we want to get it to where we're not spending 90% of our time ministering to Christians. Okay? Mark 16 was for unbelievers, and we want to spend most of our time ministering to unbelievers so that the signs can be a sign for them that will bring them to repentance. Right? So that's the purpose of that. So there's nothing wrong with laying hands on other Christians. Which Bible translation or version is most accurate? Which do you use? Predominantly, I use King James, just because that's what I was raised on. It flows most of the time when I'm quoting actually either King James, or because I've done studies back in original Greek, a lot of times it becomes a blend between the King James and the Greek, and you'll kind of hear it go back and forth. The other is the Wuest New Testament, Kenneth S. Wuest, W-U-E-S-T. That's the main. If I want to go back to the original Greek meaning, that's what I do. That's what I use. It's quick and easy, and I go to that. Now, my understanding right now is that it is currently out of print. You can still find it, but you have to look for it. But it is out of print. Matter of fact, we are in the process of picking up the copyright for it so that we can continue printing it because we want to keep it going. Then, as a reading Bible, I've been using the ESV. Just because it's a good reading Bible and tends to be pretty accurate. I've not really found any real problems. Okay, maybe there's some, I just haven't found them yet, but honestly I don't read it a whole lot. It's just when I'm not wanting to just study, but just to read and just to read, that's what it said, then I will use the ESV a lot of times. And so, again, I'm not endorsing the ESV because I have not read it all the way through. I don't know if there are some problems in it or not. Okay, it seems to be pretty accurate. It's just not as in-depth as the Wuest. Right? So, now, quickly, we'll get to some more of these questions as we go along. Yeah. Actually, one of these here says, why did Jesus say not to tell others about some of the healings he had performed? Predominantly because they would have insisted that he was the Messiah and they would have made him king rather than him getting crucified. And so he, again, kept it to himself. Now, but the good thing about that is that it proves he was not doing it to prove he was the Messiah or to prove that he was God. Right? He was doing it out of compassion because he loved him. And so a lot of people say, well, he just healed because he was God in the flesh, and that's why he could do it and we can't. And that is not true. He did not heal to prove he was God. Okay? If he was going to do that, he could have done just one major healing in front of everybody at one time, and it would have been a big deal. When Herod said, here comes a miracle, Jesus refused. So Jesus did not put on a show. He helped people. Right? That's the big thing we got to watch for. One of the ways that power corrupts is with ego. And we have to make sure that what we're doing is done for the good of the kingdom, for the good of people, and not out of ego to build a following or to somehow help us. You see what I'm saying? I mean, the way we do things, we do it on purpose. We could do it differently, and a lot of things, it would pump up a lot of things. We purposely don't. Many times when people get healed, we don't run to them with a microphone and say, okay, what are you feeling? How are you doing? How was it before Brother Curry prayed for you? Now, how is it after he prayed for you? Because it's not about Brother Curry. And we're not trying to draw attention to that. We do want testimony, but you'll notice the testimonies, we purposely make it where other people have prayed for people and that kind of stuff, because you have to understand this is not about me, it's not about John Lake, it's about Jesus working through you to change lives where you are. Amen? So, now, one thing, this is something that comes up quite often. People will say, well, you know, healing isn't the most important thing, and all you talk about is healing. Okay, first off, you don't know what I'm talking about. Okay? I talk about what people, ask me to come and talk about. If they ask me to come and do a DHT, wonderful. We want to train, equip, set people free. If they ask me to come and talk about the new creation, who you are in Christ, I would be glad to do that. If you wanted to find out about renewing the mind, we could talk about that. So I will talk about whatever you ask me to talk about, or whatever people ask me to talk about, if I know it. Now, if you ask me to come to do an end-time seminar, call somebody else, right? Because, number one, I don't see where it's so important that we have to be so detailed on it. It's, helping people now is more important to me than where it's going to end up. I know how it's going to end. God wins. It's that simple. I know that. So, main thing is, I don't care when anything happens. I just want to be ready when it happens. And the best way to do that is be ready now. And so that's what I do, is I train people and help people to be ready now for whatever happens. Because whatever happens, it's going to take faith to go through it. So we teach faith, right? Now, so when people say, a lot of people say, well, that's all you talk about is healing, and healing is the most important thing. Okay, well, first off, it may not be the most important thing to you, but that's probably because you're not sick. Okay? Because when you are sick, it becomes the most important thing. Now, admit it, obviously salvation, your eternity is the most important thing. Okay, but once we're sure about that, and you're saved and you're good, all right, let's start working on the body, getting the body fixed up so you can be around here a little while longer and do some good for the kingdom, right? Instead of just saying, well, you're saved, so go ahead and die. I mean, that's the alternative, right? And so it's because that whole idea is to get people to a place where they don't need healing. I don't teach healing to get more sickness. We teach healing. See, my desire is to work myself out of a job. I long for the day when nobody's calling me to teach healing. Why? Because nobody needs it, because everybody's well. That'd be awesome, right? Then all we do is sit around and just talk about Jesus, right? And how awesome he is, of how he wiped out sickness and disease. See, that'd be great, right? So, now, generally, if you ask me, I will teach on whatever you ask me to teach about. A lot of times, if you said, I do sometimes people say, well, just come and teach whatever you want to talk about, whatever you want to teach on, just come do it. If I do that, I'm going to talk about what Jesus did on the cross, what he did at the resurrection, what he did in you and through you, and what he can do through you, and what he desires to do. That's what I enjoy talking about most. And so I wanted to, it's funny because it always goes back to that one. You're all about healing. Okay, first off, I've been in ministry, full-time ministry like this for 15, 16 years now. And I don't even have a healing book. So if I was all about healing, I'd already have a healing book. Right? Instead, I have books on other things. But, so I'm not all about healing. Healing is just one fruit of the tree of life that is in me. Right? And so now we've got stuff that we're working on, and yes, people need books on healing, and there's different things that we do need on this to help people grow. But honestly, if I was just all about healing, I would definitely already have a healing book already out, and we don't. And so that has not been my focus. It's just on healing. So, this goes back to what we've been talking about compassion. We have to realize in the New Testament there are several words from the word love. Most of you know agape, phileo, eros, storge, it is. There's several different words for it. And we generally have a working knowledge on these words and their definition. But we have to realize when it says that God is love, it says God is agape. So the agape love is not just the God kind of love, it is who God is. And now the thing is, every definition, when you read Galatians 5 and you read about gifts of the Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit, you are those, when it says all these different fruit from the Spirit, they are all attributes of God. Because the Spirit is the Spirit of God, so they're all attributes. If you read 1 Corinthians chapter 13, where it says love is patient, love is kind, and it goes there, you can put God in there. God is patient, God is kind, God is one. Because those are definitions or attributes of love, and God is love. So it's not just talk about, well, I should be patient and I should be kind because that's what Christians do. No, those are attributes of God. And we should have those attributes because by these precious promises we become partaker of His nature. What is His nature? His nature is patient, kind, gentle, long-suffering. That's His nature. So the whole idea there, now if you take that and go over to 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and you talk about the gifts, then the gifts of healings, that is also an attribute of God's nature. He is a healer, right? You talk about the word of wisdom, that's an attribute of God. It's a word of God's wisdom. So all of these gifts, even in 1 Corinthians 12, are all attributes of God, which are all attributes of love, and it's who we are to grow up into because we're to grow up into Christ. So all of these attributes are supposed to be part of us. We are supposed to have wisdom. Jesus has made unto us wisdom, righteousness, sanctification. And so we are to have all of these attributes living through us. Galatians 5, 1 Corinthians 13, 1 Corinthians 12, all of these are attributes that we are to have living through us. Right? So it's not just people look at it like, well, here's a gift, and it works when God wants to, and He just kind of does it, and it's separate. No, that is part of the Spirit of God who dwells in you. So the word of wisdom, the word of knowledge, all these things should be flowing out of you, and when you do it, when you're walking, because you have to remember, Jesus did not function in a way where, and even where the New Testament says it, where it even mentions Him ever operating in a gift. Well, you say, well, yeah, but He had healings, yeah, and He had wisdom. He had wisdom against which no man can gainsay, the Bible says. Yeah, that's true. He had, all these different aspects. He knew what was in men's hearts, and He had discerning of spirits. And so, well, those are all gifts of the Spirit. Yes, but it never mentions them as gifts. It says that He was full of the Spirit, and they were part of that fullness. So the idea is, see, what we've done is we've focused on the individual expression of God's Spirit rather than walking in the fullness of God's Spirit, walking like Jesus. And then whenever you start to give a word of knowledge, it comes out as you start to pray for a person and you're saying, okay, be healed here, whatever it is, and all of a sudden it's like, as a matter of fact, that thing that's been going on with this person, okay, God says right now, here's what you need to do, and it just comes out of you. And you go, wait a minute, Father, we need a word of knowledge, we need a word of wisdom right now, and so we just receive that from you, so now speak. So thus saith the Lord. But see, that's not the way it works. And that only works that way in church. It doesn't work that way on the street. On the street, as you're ministering, it just comes out. Things that you don't know. You pray for what you know, and if you keep talking, stuff you don't know comes out. And that's just the fullness of the Spirit, and He just speaks through you. But it's not this, hoopla type thing where you draw attention to it. You say, oh, thus saith the Lord. Here it, It's not like that. It's just God, He loves you, wants to take care of you. As a matter of fact, that financial bill that just fell through and it's costing you your mortgage, God says, no, don't worry about that. He's got this coming through that's going to work for you. See, that's the way a word of knowledge should come. It shouldn't have to be a thus saith the Lord. It should just be the wisdom of God flowing out of you. That's how Jesus ministered. You look at, He never said, thus saith the Lord. But yet He gave prophetic word, He gave words of wisdom, words of knowledge, things that's going on. Look what He did with the woman at the well. You know, go get your husband. Oh, I don't have a husband. That's right. You said that. You've had 5 husbands. The man you're with now is not your husband. Well, guess what that is? People say, well, that was a word of knowledge. Well, yeah, but that was the fullness of the Spirit flowing out of him. He didn't say, thus saith the Lord, and I know this, and I'm going to tell you the secret of your heart. See, what we're trying to get you to is quit focusing on the gift, focus on the giver, as they said. Now, I'm not, again, the Bible says to covet the gifts, so I'm not talking bad about them. I'm just saying there is a fullness of the Spirit that causes gifts to work better. But the more you focus on the gift, the more you start to elevate a person. Well, I have this gift, I have that gift. This is my gift, this is my gifting. And all of a sudden, it's mine, and it comes back to you, and we start elevating people that function in the gifts, and the purpose of the gifts is not to elevate a person, it's to elevate Jesus. Amen? Are you with me so far? Yeah. Okay, now, so agape, if you're going to walk in agape, if you're going to walk in love, 1 Corinthians 13, then you're going to have to walk in a way that is loves and treats every person the exact same. I just wrote down some real quick things here. True love, we talked about this yesterday. It is, I'm trying to remember the words actually Finney used for it, but he said that God's love is indifferent. In other words, it's not partial. Okay? It treats everybody the same. No matter who it is, it treats everybody the same. That means it loves everyone the same. If you're going to walk in true agape, you're going to love everybody the same and treat them the same. But if you are walking in a sense where this person, you love this person more than this person, now you've slipped into phileo. And that's human, emotional type love. Right? Now, so agape, because God is agape and God never changes, agape never changes. So agape is consistent, and you need to get a hold of this. Why? Because we know that you can heal without love. But why? Why would you want to settle for that? So, but what we've had to do is we've had to differentiate, because people say, well, you got to have love to minister healing. Okay, the problem with that is, the problem is the Bible doesn't say that per se. It does say the faith will work without love. But that's where God wants you to work. He wants you to operate with faith in love. But the problem that we came across when we started especially was that people would say, well, I just don't love people, so God can't use me in healing. Yes, He can. And the thing is, you start ministering to people and you'll start loving people. It's amazing. You can't give to a person without eventually loving them. If you give enough, you will love them. Why? Because where your treasure is, there your heart is. Right? So if you find somebody that you don't like, the best way to start liking them is start buying them gifts. You start buying them gifts, you will like them. Because you're going to realize that the longer you don't like them, the more it's going to cost you. Right? It just works that way. You start loving them real quick. So the other thing is, and these are some differentiation because I want you to understand, we're talking about compassion. Okay? Phileo, agape has compassion. Phileo love has sympathy. Sympathy says, oh, you poor thing, I wish there was something I could do. Compassion says, oh, you poor thing, let me help you. See, there's a movement. Agape, compassion, has a movement toward the people, whereas phileo and sympathy, or even empathy in that, says, oh, you poor thing, wow, that's, really, really sorry for you. But compassion says, there is something I can do to help, and then steps forward. So, also, agape values every person the way God values people. So you don't look at a person and think, this person's worth something, that person's not. You look at them and you have to think in the terms of this person, every person is worth something because Jesus died for them. Every person is worth Jesus to God. So if he's worth Jesus to God, then these people ought to be worth something to you, especially if you're walking in the love of God. Amen? Now, let's get back into the manual. very quickly here. Now, on page 35, we mentioned this. This is one of the first things that come up. This, and I think the next one too. In Matthew 17, it says in verse 14, when they were come to the multitude, in came a certain man kneeling down to him and saying, Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is lunatic and sore vexed. For oft times he falls in the fire and oft in water, and I brought him to your disciples, and they could not cure him. Then Jesus answered and said, O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? Bring him hither to me. And Jesus rebuked the devil, and he departed out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. Then came the disciples to Jesus apart, and said, Why could not we cast him out? Jesus said to them, Because of your unbelief. End of story, right there. And we're going to go on. But Jesus gave them the answer. Why can we cast it out? Because of your unbelief. Now, notice this. This is in Matthew 17. Jesus' disciples had already gone out, healed the sick, cast out devils, had great results in Matthew 9, Matthew 10, all the way through. So they already done this. But now they couldn't, and Jesus says, because your unbelief. So they walked in faith, and now they're walking in unbelief. What does that tell us? Your faith can fluctuate. It doesn't automatically grow like you grow chronologically as a person. Your faith grows and continues based on what you're doing. Now, you also have to remember this. When Jesus sent them out, he said, you go out and you do this. Then they came back. And he said when he sent them out, he gave them power to do what he told them to do. As at this point, they had not received the Spirit as on the day of Acts, or on the day of Pentecost in the book of Acts. So that when the Spirit came upon them and dwelt, because later on he says, the Spirit, you know the Spirit because he has dwelt with you, but he shall be in you. Well, how did he dwell with them? He dwelt with them in the form of Jesus. So that he was not in them and dwelling in them at that point. As they went out, Jesus gave them authority to cast out devils and do these things. Then whenever they came back, the mission was over. So now they're not on a mission. Now they're back with Jesus. And now what they were going to see, originally they had to do it by authority and by the Spirit, him giving them authority to go. But now they would have to do it by faith. How do we know that? Because he said, because of your unbelief. So it was the lack of faith on their part that caused it not to happen. Are you with me? You see that? Okay. Now, notice what he says. He says, because of your unbelief, for verily I say unto you, if you have faith. So now we know that belief, Jesus is equating faith and belief together. If you have faith as a grain of mustard seed, you shall say. Notice that if you have faith, you shall say. So if you don't say, you don't have faith. You got that? Faith speaks. You shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove. And nothing shall be impossible unto you. Stop right there. Notice, if you have faith, you will speak, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. Now, let me ask you this. Has faith passed away? No. Because if it has, you can't get saved. Right? And here he said, you can do this. Nothing shall be impossible to you if you have faith. And if you have faith, you will speak. So if you have faith, nothing shall be impossible. That means healings or anything else. So for people that believe that healing has passed away or that it only works a certain way, you notice he didn't give any qualifications concerning this. He said, if you have faith, anything can happen for you. Whatever you're believing for, it will happen. If you have faith and if you speak. So this idea of, well, I spoke and I had faith, but it wasn't God's will, so it didn't happen. Okay, God, listen. I'm going to say something here that's going to violate religious thought, but I got Bible proof for it. Okay? Number one, we have to pray for God's will to be done. So God's will is not always done. Right? We know that it's not God's will that any should perish, but that all should come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. Is that true? Come to a knowledge of the truth and be saved, basically. But everybody's not being saved. So God's will is not always done. If God's will was always automatically done, then Jesus would not have said, pray therefore the Father, right? And thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. If his will is automatically being done, we wouldn't have to pray for his will to be done. It would just automatically happen. And if it is automatically happening, he can't tell us to pray that it happened, because then he's telling us to say vain words, and he just said, don't say vain words. He said, you'll be held accountable for every idle, vain, useless word you speak. And so he can't tell us to pray vain, useless words, which you would be doing if he told us to pray for God's will to be done, if God's will is automatically done. That make sense? Are you still with me? So, if you look back at the history of Israel, God said, when the people came to him and said, we want a king. He said, I want to be your king. They said, no, we want a king like all the other nations have a king. He said, that's not my will. My will is that I be your king. They said, we want a king like everybody else. He said, okay, I'll give you one. But you ain't going to like it. Not going to be good. Right? And then he gave them Saul. And Saul started out good, but ended bad. When it ended bad, do you think it surprised God? No, he knew what was going to happen. Right? But you know, so it was not God's will that they have a king, because he wanted to be their king, and yet he gave them a king, even though it wasn't his will. Now think about that. I can give you several other examples also. Actually, probably will if we have time a little later on, because you need to get a hold of this, that you have a responsibility on this earth to see that God's will be done. Right? Now, he says, he also does that those that endure, and those that do the will of God, the will of his Father, are the ones that shall endure. Right? Those are the ones that will be saved. And then so we know that everybody's not doing his will, because we know that all are not going to be saved. So, here he says, we look back at this, Now, you have to remember this. In the original Greek, verse 21 is not there. And you'll see that in most translations, they've taken it out. Because verse 21 says, howbeit this kind, meaning this demon, goeth not out but by prayer and fasting. Okay? That is not in the original Greek. Now, people say, well, okay, it's not in the original Greek, so we can't use it because it's not in the original Greek. But it is in Mark 6. So it is there, so we can't use it. That may be true, but you have to remember where Mark got his gospel from, and you have to look at it from textual, what they call textual criticism. And the reality of it is very simple. The basic rule of biblical interpretation is simple. In the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, a doctrine can be established. If there's only one mention of it, it cannot be established as a doctrine. Okay? So if it is